recently in the Facebook group called Affinity Photo, Mike Gromish added this picture here, or a set of pictures here, where he'd taken this train image, he'd cut the train out, and he had sort of added a night sky and a moon image to make this composite image, which is it's very good and very well done. But there were some other comments later on about he should have toned the train down to make it look like it was taken at night time, whereas because it was obviously taken during the day. So I added a little comment about a possible way of doing it. So I thought I'd make a little video to show you Mike what I meant and other people what I meant. So I'm going to go back to this image here, which I set up. Both of these, I've got a background image of the fireworks and one of this Harley Davidson bike. Both of these images were got from Pixabay.com. The bike was obviously taken in a studio, and I've cut it out and I saved it as a JPEG, and then I added that JPEG as a new layer above this nighttime image. So obviously this doesn't really work tonally with the background, and when I changed it I got this effect, so it is hopefully looks like it was taken at night. Now I do realize that I'm only looking at the tones here. I'm not going into details of is the light source coming from the right direction and all that. It's not, composite images are not something I'm necessarily any good at. I just wanted to help Mike and others sort of maybe get a little bit closer to what they want. This probably works best on a nighttime image, but I will have a little go at trying to do the same thing in a daytime image a bit later on. So just to move this along, I've got the firework image here and I have my Harley Davidson image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this background and come to copy, come to my nighttime image and then edit and paste, and then I'm just going to resize this so it fits the image better and move it to where I want it. I'll just rotate that slightly, I think, and it's probably a bit too big for what, but this is only for demonstration purposes, so I'm going to leave it like that because it makes it easier to see. So let me come off this tool. So we have this bike which is obviously not taken at night time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample a colour of the night sky, probably the lighter blue sky rather than the sort of more darker blues that are in this background here at the bottom part. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the eyedropper, I will click, left click and hold the button down and drag out, and as you can see the colour that is under the cursor is the colour that will be selected. So I'm going to pick a blue from about here, let go, and that colour is now in that little circle next to the eyedropper, and if I click on that, the foreground colour will now become that colour that we selected. So if I now come up to layer and new fill layer, that layer will be filled with the colour that I'd previously selected. So what I'll do now is I'm going to click and drag this layer down and into the background layer, the bike background layer, and I'll drag it down far enough so the blue line that appears only comes as far as the icon. If it goes all the way across, it will be a layer in between these two layers, and I want it to be part of the bike layer. So let me click and drag this down, so hopefully you can see that the blue line only goes as far as the icon. And what that has done is filled that bike layer with the colour. What I now need to do is change the blending mode. Now we are changing the blending mode of the fill layer, not the bike layer. So you can come down all the various options and find one that you like. See, overlay is not too bad. Obviously some of them will not be of much use, but negation is not too bad. But the one I found that worked for me anyway, I used reflect. Now I didn't think this was totally correct, so you don't have to do this, but what I did was I right clicked this and I duplicated that reflect fill layer, giving me this much darker tonal, hopefully tonally correct image for this particular firework background. So basically that was it. I've got two fill layers of that dark blue colour, both on reflect. You might be able to get a totally different effect by having one on reflect and one on some other blending mode. But that is how I got to my image, and I do realise that people who do composites properly are probably shaking their head at me and laughing their socks off or what have you, because they probably do it all with fine brush strokes, one brush stroke at a time, using dodge and burn and things like that. But for someone of my abilities who wanted to do an image like this, this is a sort of quick and easy way of getting one image slightly tonally nearer to the other image. So like I said, I will try this on a daytime shot. Now I've not really practiced this that much, so this may or may not work. So let me go back to the bike image. So I'm going to right click this and copy it, and I've got this daytime image of a woodland again from Pixabay.com, but I'm going to edit and paste this in. Now obviously this wouldn't necessarily be parked in a woodland area, but let me just increase the size slightly so it's a bit bigger than the bench at the background. Alright, like I said, I'm not overly worried about the composition of this, be it, you know, the light in the right direction and all that. That's something you would sort of totally different subject when it comes to composite images, which is probably more beyond my capabilities. But so we'll now try the same sort of idea for tonally matching this to the background. Let me come off that torch second. Now as for tone, I mean, we got a lot of greens up here, and we've also got this sort of sand colour, or even the bench colour. The bench colour may be a bit too strong. Maybe I'll try the sand area. So let me just click and drag this icon out, and maybe going for maybe a slightly brighter sand area. Let's try that one. So that colour is now in the little dot there, so if I click on that and move the colour to the big foreground area, and then layer, new fill layer, click and drag this down into the bike layer, so that fill layer is the one that is selected, and then it's a case of trying the different blend modes. Which one was that? That was colour burn. I mean, we come to colour burn and maybe just lower the opacity down. That may work. Right, let's put that back up to 100. Have a look at some other options. overlay, soft light. Again, you could lower the opacity. What have we got here? I mean, obviously some of these will not work at all. Saturation, maybe. See, reflecting the daytime image probably doesn't work so well. Glow, where are we? Last ones, I think. Erase. I mean, let's just go back to reflect, for example, and I'll just lower down that opacity, and yeah, I'm not 100% certain whether that would work on reflect. It might work better up where I was on color burn, and then just lower the opacity just to make it not so obvious. Yeah, so that might need to be, and daytime shots may need to be have a different way of getting to where you want to be, rather than the nighttime shot, where I think it works a bit better, this process. But I think it's a case of trial and error, of, you know, with which images you're going to try and use this on, and which color you sample from. I mean, I could probably try this again and sampling from the tree or from the greenery up here or the bench, and getting a totally different tone. So it's a little bit a case of trial and error, but hopefully it will give you some ideas on what you can do to try and match the tone of one image to another image in a composite image. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.